despite the fact that the reunion between my biological mother and myself seemed to be going quite well. My stepfather took me aside one day and said, "It is so good to have you here. I just hope Sylvia doesn't do or say something to screw this up." I thought he was joking, and so I laughed. As we got into the relationship, I began to understand what he meant. It took a great deal of work not to become estranged in that relationship. She was not an easy woman to live with. Estrangement is a weird animal. It is so easy to fall into for a variety of reasons. Some of them may be trauma, abuse. Some of them may be misunderstandings. Some of them may be events that were totally out of control. Sometimes it's jealousy. That's the story behind Joseph and his brothers. They were jealous of Joseph and the attention that dad paid to him, and Joseph fed that with regaling them with his dreams of superiority. And so it's really not all that surprising that they sell Joseph off into slavery and tell dad he got killed by a wild animal. Fast forward, Joseph falls into favor with the Pharaoh in Egypt because of his ability to interpret dreams and his skills at administration, and so rises in the ranks of the Egyptian government to a place of great authority. Fast forward again, there is a famine throughout the land, especially in the land where Joseph's brothers were, and they go down into Egypt to procure food. And they run into Joseph, but they don't recognize him, but he knows who they are. And there's some pretty ugly stuff that goes on. In the end, Joseph reveals who he is, and they are reconciled. Sort of. Because there comes a point where they begin to wonder, will there be retribution for what we have done? And in the end, Joseph assures them that that will not be the case. And they have been reconciled with their long lost brother. Reconciliation is a dirty word these days. If it's not totally out of the question, the understanding of reconciliation is that you will eventually come to my point of view. When willing to do the hard work that it takes to reconcile. We'd much rather live with estrangement. And frankly, estrangement is much easier. You just ignore those you don't like or agree with. And we have become a people estranged from one another at almost every single level of our lives. I don't sit down with a family these days without hearing a story of some estrangement, either between parents and children or siblings, and sometimes both. We are estranged in our social lives, in our athletic lives, in our academic lives. We are estranged economically. There are those we just as soon ignore and pretend they don't exist. Or there are those we are estranged from out of envy, jealousy. We are estranged politically, particularly, where we simply write the other side off, as though they have absolutely nothing good about them. We are estranged internationally. Where I grew up in Western New York, it's hard to believe that we're fighting with Canada. Every aspect of our lives is estrangement, even in our religious lives. I had hope at one point of the ecumenical movement, not anymore. We've become so estranged. Reconciliation between denominations and communions seems absolutely absurd. And yet, in the midst of that, we hear that Jesus' resurrected ministry is that of reconciliation, of reconciling all things to God through him. There are days I wake up and I go, so Jesus, how's that working for you? There seems to be little signs that it is working these days. And yet, we're called to live into that reality. And how do we do that? Well, the gospel reading that is often paired with the Joseph story is Jesus teaching on enemies. And he says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's the first step, to change our attitudes and to begin to pray for those whom we are estranged from. And the second piece is to listen. It is a rare commodity these days to listen, especially to those who disagree with you. For there is truth in both sides. And how do we ferret out that truth that binds us? If we don't listen, we'll never come to some sense of reconciliation. And then we take actions to come together. It's hard work. It's much easier to be estranged. And yet even now, God is reconciling this world unto himself at great cost to God. A death on a cross, watching us tear each other apart. God weeps for the likes of us, but has yet to abandon us. He continues to draw us together in small ways, that we might be a sign of hope to the world, and perhaps even a lesson to how to move from estrangement to reconciliation and know the joys that that can bring. Amen.